in and gets that kill, suddenly it's a 5v4 fight that HLE Esports wins without Aphelios almost every single time. So that's got to be your win condition.
Even then, I think in the late game, once Ghana has 2 or 3 items, that is not enough anymore. Like, that, you still need to take into account how much damage this Gwen is going to be able to do. Looking at the champions, how life is available outside of Chovy, dealing with that Gwen later on is going to be such a nuisance. And Life, first 10 minutes, better get ahead every lane.
Yeah,
chắc chắn là
let's
chúng
see
ta phải
whether they
chê
can
cái
do
màn
that.
trình diễn
We
vừa
are
rồi
on the
nhưng
rift
mà
for
nhìn
game
chung
number
một cách khách
2.
quan hơn thì
Yeah, I'm just thinking
cái thế giới
about
này
this from
Hanwha
Def's
tới được
perspective
tới đây
after 20 minutes,
là
and
ok
that
rồi.
is a game that I
Đội
don't want
hình
to
này
play.
thì cũng không ai bắt họ là phải vào
Personally,
top 4
you
thật
don't
sự.
have any
Đội
mobility
hình
at
này
all,
mà
and
theo
someone can
Hanwha
jump
bước
on
vào
you
top 4
from
thì nghe
almost
nó
every
cũng
single
hơi,
angle.
nó
It's
cũng hơi vô lý
very,
một
very
tí
slow.
bởi vì thực ra
And
họ
also
không
Pro.
hơn quá nhiều đội ở
Yeah, no,
tại cái vòng
it's
loại
just
trực tiếp
there's
này.
no good
Cho nên
news.
là ở trong cái trận BO5 này
Connecting can get
nhu
kicked out
cầu
of the
dành
team
cho HLE
fight
Esports là làm
by
sao làm
owner.
khó được T1 hết mức có thể.
It is very.
Ở tại
I mean,
LCK mùa
either
hè rồi
one
họ đã
of these
kéo được
frontliners
T1
for
tới
HLE Esports is
thì
going to be removed.
nếu như làm được điều đó một
Fight
lần
very
nữa ở
likely.
tại trong
So
trận BO5 ngày hôm nay thì cũng đã có thể
it
coi
feels
được
like
thành công
HLE
của bên phía
Esports
HLE
desperately
Esports rồi.
tried to
Còn bây giờ quay trở lại
copy
với
someone
trận
else's
đấu
homework
thì
almost even in
Wheeler
terms
đang
of that. For going back to the
cánh
reference you were saying
trên
earlier about
nhưng mà anh
pop
ta vẫn
quiz,
đủ
like
thời gian di chuyển
in terms of how they wanted to
là khởi đầu bùa
finish
xanh luôn.
this
Khởi đầu bùa
round,
xanh đánh trên
because
dưới thôi.
I understand Vista wants
khi
that
đó thì
power
Poppy
mid,
lại khởi
wants
đầu
to be able to
từ
maybe
xanh, tức là
threaten
Poppy
Faker
đánh
so
lên
Chovy
trên.
can get a lead,
Nào,
get
bây giờ anh
ahead,
Hoàng
so
Luân
he wants
cảm
to be
thấy
on this
sự
roaming
bằng chung
support.
với
They
Poppy
have
và
enough
Gwen
prio
chưa.
with his bars
Bởi vì
into
tôi
the
nghĩ rằng là
Aphelios.
hoàn
I
toàn
do
có
like that because that's one
thứ
more
nhất là
lane
Gwen
where
này
you
là
can
Gwen
get
đi
prio,
được cầm
then you can send Vista to mid and hope to get Chovy that money he needs so desperately early. But otherwise, this Nautilus doesn't feel very strong to this composition at all, and is often just going to be isolated and blown up so quickly if he decides to engage ever.
Yeah. And I'm sort of looking at this game like, okay, that's an interesting one. Gets himself an electrocute proc. As Faker has taken the aftershock, not going to be any electrocution. Lissandra's this time around pretty happy with
bạn
that.
vào đủ tầm để
As
cho đối
Carrion now
phương
sitting in
có
the brush
thể
gets a bit of a
ở
thumbs
cấp
up
2
here.
từ cấp 2 trở đi khi mà
Deft is
đã
just
có
gonna
cái
walk away.
vòng tròn đánh giá
I like
thì nhiều
the
khả năng đội
execute
rất là
block.
con
I think that the value of aftershock early on is pretty relevant, but then you can argue, as Faker, later in the game, your only job is utilize your passive
tạm thời thì
and
chưa thấy sự chủ
protect
động
the rest of the team.
của Vin nhiều lắm. Faker vẫn đang kiểm soát kèo
And
này
this
khá là
is,
ok.
of course,
Lại
a
cao độ
featured
chiến lược với nhau.
matchup presented
Cả hai
by
đều bấm hết ba bình.
Mercedes-Benz Chovy versus
3 lần bấm
Faker.
bình
And already, you know,
chỉ mà
Chovy
keo
doing
rồi.
okay in it.
Và ở nhánh phụ
Faker
mình
down
Faker có
underneath
cộng điểm bánh
200 health, but it's not exactly the greatest
Faker
early
tốt.
on here for the Lissandra,
Chovy ở
but she is
nhánh
pretty
phụ
good
thì Chovy
at
lại cộng
weathering a
vào
storm
với
and
kiên định
denying all of the
và có
jump
thêm
ins,
cái
as
điểm phòng
that
thủ
circle
mình
of frost
chắc
is
dây
going to
trượt.
indicate exactly
Đó,
that,
đâu
but
đó
of course not
Faker
enough
vẫn
just yet.
đang là
If he
đang
connects
là
that
người bị
chain
lép
there
vế
too,
hơn sau
Faker
những
might
lần
have to
trao
blow a
đổi tiếp
flash
theo.
there. Is going to be
Pha
forced
vừa
out
mình
of lane.
chăng gì trúng là Faker mất tốc biến rồi đó.
Yeah, this is where Chovy found a lot of success in
Cái
game
tôi
one
ngay từ đầu
early.
ấy là cái
Was
kèo này
behind
anh
in
cái
CS
kèo này
technically speaking at 15,
Lissandra
but did threaten Faker,
được
prevented him
con
from
lâm
using
lăng đi đường
teleport.
đâu.
Once again,
Nhưng
you're
cái
seeing
việc
how
chúng ta
strong
cứ
this
nói
player
rằng là
is at
trong
early lane.
And it's not impossible, right? Because if I remember correctly, it was Jensen into Icon that was actually able to, in this counter matchup, still get the upper hand, still be able to find repeated counter kills.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a loose counter. It's a post-6 counter. We've actually seen it in other regions, like us here in Korea, we think that Lissandra very good into LeBlanc, but we've seen in other regions it hasn't even worked more often than not.
Đầu
So
tiên là nó có làm choáng, nó có
it's not
CC.
100%
Thứ hai là nó có độ
like
cơ
that
động.
hard
Mặc
counter.
dù là Bobby có thể vô hiệu hóa
Thing
được
is,
những
Owner
cú cắt và
moving
sắc
towards the top side of the map.
chuyển.
Morgan actually playing this one out pretty well so far, but it's very, very even. And we've already said Palm will need huge leads if things want to be good. Already a flash on the bottom side as Gumiushi gets himself out of the way. The Graviton comes on through as well. As Deft
Trọng trường
walking away
kích hoạt
level 3,
chưa
so
giữ
can't
chân,
use the
người ta đang
ult or
đi bộ về
anything
đã
like
bị
that.
giữ
As
chân lại
Carrion,
kia
he
ra vào
wants
quy hoạch
even
câu.
more than passive stacking up the
Vẫn
flash.
chưa đủ, vẫn ép được
Eventually
tốc
comes out and T1
ép không có hồi máu nha, anh
brute
ta
force
cầm thanh
Life
tẩy.
out of the lane.
Như vậy là bên
Double pots had to be used here for Deft. He barely gets out of this one, and now you've lost control of a lane that you already had pushing power in, and feels like a little bit wasteful to go for that type of all-in. Losing your summoner as well here. Yes, you still have the Hex Flash here as Vista, but it's painful.
One upside here is that if you can set up a play or maybe a possible dive around Gumiushi at some point, now that the flash isn't available, that might provide you a little bit of counterplay, but as a whole, probably going to be the same story which you've seen throughout the entire tournament, which is Gumiushi gets Aphelios' Faker.
Yeah, gonna have to claw his way out, and he does so. Chovy once again with a lot of control on the wave, and now if Faker goes home, it's going to be a lot longer before he makes his way back to the lane, as Vista also unlocked on his way back in after
là đã bê về đã di chuyển ra nhưng vẫn bị cấu máu.
So the type of play I was talking about with this Nautilus
bấm
that
bê về
you
và
see
bây giờ
from
phải đi
Vista
bộ
all
ngược
the
ra.
time. It's something Carrier loves to do. Effort first from the LCK, very famous for doing this on the Nautilus, where you have something like a Varus, you can keep that lane pushed, you have the prio, and then you just come on mid, and if Faker is not here, obviously you don't look for the pick, you just help push the wave up and grab some of the extra CS. So it being nice here for Chovy, will we get a free back as a result.
Liking this from Vista, helping out Chovy, who really wanted to back there, but the wave not actually crashing. So getting a little bit of help there from his support, making sure that those stacks stay down and you share the gold that is available to you. And again, Kana not really getting any resources, really a big switch up that we've seen here in style from T1, especially recently where they have been focusing so much on Kana, but so far, they're working out fine, right? Good Yushi and Carry are able to generate leads quite aggressively.
đang đi đường ok đó chứ.
Owner as well,
hề thua kém gì so với lại Kana bên phía bên kia cả. Bây giờ ta vừa bê về trước, sau khi ta lên lại được khu vực trên thì đến giờ ta và Kana chẳng có nhiều sự chênh lệch. Đánh rất chừng mực, biết rằng mình thua đối phương có phép hỗ trợ, đối phương tập rốt, không hề có những pha đi ẩu. Và đánh rất phù thuộc vào chuyện mà đừng đạt ở đâu. Sau 7 sói và có thể là nhường người xanh xong thì bên phía HLE có thể hướng tới chuyện mà tấn công cánh trên. Honor có thể chuyển rất là khéo nha, ta đọc được vòng đường của đối phương và ta khai thác đúng vào chỗ một Wheeler đang không có mặt ở cánh dưới.
Having that teleport in those bot skirmishes, that was, something Lyric joked about earlier on for the early game for this Renekton player. It's certainly something that could be very useful in the next upcoming moments. Because speaking of which, I mean, you can see the group up here. Wheeler is scouting this out. Having that teleport right now is so critical for Morgan.
Really like this read here because you know you see the camp is gone, you see the ward, it's relatively fresh, so there's a reasonable expectation that Owner is still hovering about top side. Vista and Dev play accordingly, very respectfully, and with that knowledge, Morgan also again available to shove in.
Giai đoạn đi đường mà rừng không tác động nhiều lên khu vực đường trên thì Morgan đang xử lý rất tốt. Anh ta hơn gần 2 đợt lính so với lại Kana và ta đã lấy một
against the Gwen, because once that Riftmaker hits, it already becomes a lot harder to just stay away from the threat of the all-in.
Trên bây giờ đang không thua,
and then
rừng cũng
post
không bị chênh lệch nhiều. Vấn đề còn lại chỉ là ở khu vực giữa.
I want to see what happens after this first Rift Herald, because that's when things can really get out of hand.
That was a sexy follow, but not actually going to eventuate, result in anything.
Well, I mean, he gets a nice trade here once again.
Looked very, very cool.
It did look cool, and Vista's here. I mean, this is, we've talked about this so much power here with this roam.
Double back.
X-Flash.
Needs a few extra links in that chain, unfortunately.
Almost terrible time.
But the timing of this is so huge. Just like we saw last game, you force Faker in, you shove these waves in, Herald spawning. Unlike Esports trying to get every small advantage they can before this objective they know T1's going to fight for.
And Chronicler, are T1 going to fight for it?
I know this is a trick question, because everyone knows the answers to this, Atlas. This is the freebie points on the pub quiz. Yes, they will 5-man commit to Herald, because they've always done it.
That's a
Bây giờ hai bên đều đầy đủ
for
tài
you at
nguyên nha,
least.
không có ai bị mất một tài nguyên đáng kể cả ngoại trừ chúng ta là người
Kuma, Yushi, and Carrier shoved out the early wave. I'm just going to sack the wave that's being shoved in the ball right now, but Humble Life actually able to get over here with everyone.
Is this a River K-Rare, potentially?
Có thể là giữ để coi con để giữ chân hay không. Honor vẫn đang cố gắng giải quyết con bùa đỏ. Hai bên vẫn chưa bên nào thực sự tiến vào cả. Nhưng HLE đang là những người có được lợi thế.
Faker, force some resources to come back mid. Faker's going to have to clear this wave. At some point, T1 is going to have to engage if they want this.
Down to one caster creep each. They are both going to be cleared out. Both of these wards also dying at exactly the same time. Both of these teams doing almost exactly the same thing. We'll see whether an actual fight is going to break out as Hum Alive remain in control as far as vision is concerned on the Herald.
You have teleports. Just send Kana to bot to actually catch the wave. Stop letting the wave die.
I'm actually sad also too that T1, I mean, looks like they're going to commit to this, which is very, very greedy in terms of positioning. Your Faker has to be so careful. They're just going to straight up start this.
Engaging into T1 is dangerous though, as we've got a back coming through from Morgan, maybe thinking about getting himself an ultimate teleport coming on down from T1 as Faker's getting in hooked as the ultimate keeps himself alive. Chains of corruption come out as well though, as teleports and teleports surely getting as well as she eventually decides that she wants to get out as Chovy bullying Gumayusi away from this pit. T1, they don't want the fight.
T1, I mean, they really just got completely out-rotated here. Morgan's on the backside, by the way, and is going to be able to catch this wave. But hit point advantage goes down to like esports. They've got long-range engage, too. You have to respect this as T1. This could be a huge mistake. There's a teleport coming through top side here.
That's the second teleport to come on in. Faker, no flash available, but now has full health once again. As Morgan, he can blast going over, but the information is now there from T1. They know that this isn't going to work out, as Owner is going to steal away the Rift Herald. Now Morgan diving on in immediately. He gets exhausted. Hannah looking for Willer on the backline, but has he overextended is the question. Morgan staying alive for so long, and first blood goes to Faker. Chovy gets smashed into the wall at the back of Shelly's pit, but does make his way out. Gumayusi trying to get him. They're not going to fall for that funny business. It's a double kill for Faker, and T1 a huge lead in the early game.
It would not be an LCK quarterfinal versus LCK. LCK v LCK quarterfinal, but we're going to have crazy extended fights here on the Rift Herald. And I gotta say, T1, it looked risky, it looked really green. They were there with low health points, but when they put that ward over the wall, I think it was Faker who actually hit that blast cone to keep Morgan out. That was the turning point. You push Morgan away in that moment, he can't come in on top of everybody else. Faker teleported to the top side of that fight. At the beginning was really scary, but they ended up winning the fight at the end of the day. And so much aggression, so much all-inning from Hanwha esports. Chovy's not able to get the kill on Kana, who's now going to get a ton of extra gold on the top side of the map.
And here in the X replay, I think, yeah, this blast cone is really, really big. I think in general, just again, the limit testing that is being found here by T1 is incredible. Like, look at how confident Kana is playing. This is Tornadoes, but the amount of damage that he soaks up to the very limit, gets healed by Guma once he goes back into the rest of his team, barely stays alive as Chovy goes in. But in the end, it's T1 that's standing. My main issue with this fight is not how well it's played out, because I think both sides did well, but why did we stand there for 2 minutes as multiple waves were just being thrown back and forth in that bot side? Not necessary at all. However, like last game, the fight I think was played out nicely by both sides. And the end result, T1 is the one that are very, very happy by the end of it.
I think the pessimistic LCK caster take on this is not a good look for our region, but you know what? That was certainly flashy, okay?
No, it was beautiful.
And Dad Wolf makes his return to the world stage. I like it.
But yeah, I think the blast cone was the entire crux of Hanwha esports' plan, because you're teleporting back in as Morgan, and if you don't get that engaged and can't get over that wall, your whole plan crumbles in an instant. That ward and that hit there by Faker to destroy the blast cone just makes this fight a 5v4, unfortunately. We're going to see a bit of a support battle here on the bottom side of the map. The Streak is the next objective to contest, and right now, Faker has control of the mid-wave. Owner's got the faster rotation.
Yeah, Deft actually going to have to cleanse very early on in this one just to get rid of some Winter's Bite slow. As the ult does go wide there from Carrier, was expecting him to walk into the brush, decides to take the long way around, but it doesn't really matter. They get the cleanse, they also get more plates here. And Deft is being pushed way back. And I think that that fight around the Rift Herald was a massive Hail Mary from Hanwha esports. They sacrificed so much because they needed to win that. And it feels like it was backbreaking because T1 now with a lead and the composition that scales so well, moving further forward. Hanwha esports very quickly running out of options this game.
And trading even here, like, yeah, maybe Morgan, you know, is able to pick up extra plates compared to Gumayusi, but it's who does the gold go to?
Yeah, sort of trading even, but not really, right? Because you're splitting the gold in a Renekton versus I mean, you're getting all the money.
And even if it was favorable, you're still scaling worse. Yeah. So like even trades or slightly favorable trades are still bad trades. And in of itself, it says a lot that you call a basically like what was it, 8-10 minute fight with a composition already their Hail Mary. Like that's not a good place to be in as a team. And I think that this is something that we've seen Hanwha do a lot domestically, right? Like this is one of the reasons why this team has faltered so much in summer, and we can still see in these plays how good these players are. But that's not good enough anymore, because T1's players are also very, 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 very good.
T1, I feel like as soon as they decided they were going to put over the roster, and they fired the Dani from their coaching staff, right? We saw this upgraded T1 that made it to the summer finals. Their macro just suddenly very steeply exploded into world class, right? And you see these rotations from Faker. Part of the reason why they picked the Aphelios is because they know that they can lane swap, go top, and then threaten plates while also gathering for Rift Herald. Plays like this in group
Và
ups
vấn
like
đề
this,
quan
or
trọng nữa
why
là
this
lại
team
một
is one step ahead of
chưa
Hanwha Esports in terms of
chưa
macro,
online được ở
and
trong cuộc
Hanwha's
đấu
just
với
not
T1.
matching, right? I mean,
Khi
there
gặp
were so
một
many
cái cơ thi
opportunities
đấu
for
vô
Morgan to
cùng
use that
vững chắc
teleport,
và
do
bây giờ với
something
Police
else, but he
ra
decided to go for the
2-0-0.
flank, the one Hail Mary,
Faker
and
thậm
didn't
chí là
work.
có thể tự tin nói rằng anh ta
I mean,
không
these
hề đi
small
đường kém hơn so với lại Chovy về nhà sẽ xong
decision-making
trận bị lỡ đầu
advantages that
tiên.
T1 have put us at a 3k
thì vẫn
gold deficit
hoàn
for
thành
Hanwha
tốt cái việc
Esports.
farm.
This is something this
Nếu mà
composition
nói với
can't
hai là
realistically recover with.
What was the score again in the regional gauntlet?
nhiều áp lực hơn mà Morgan
It was 2-3.
Yeah, it was definitely.
But how did it start?
rất tốt.
I
Tiền
think
anh ta đang dẫn
if I
trước hơn
remember
so với
correctly,
cả
it started with a 2-0 for T1,
Faker
right?
đang nhỉnh hơn khoảng tầm 400.
Wasn't it?
I wasn't going to talk about that
cần
yet.
phải
You
offline.
were saving. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's a
You
game
were saving it.
Because I'm sitting back. I'm subdued, you know. I'm joining
Đã
the
cầm thấy Lâm Lăng
T1
rồi đó
now.
là cũng
Alice's first rodeo, okay?
là háo hức để gắn tim lắm rồi. Và bây giờ
around the block a few times.
He knows how to spin the narrative.
Tụi vừa mới có được một, đối phương đã có hai.
We might have to do some real web spinning, and we might see at least game 3 at this point with how things are looking right now, because this is not a game again that Hanwha Esports can realistically
T1 bây giờ
recover
cứ nhẹ nhàng từng nhịp
unless they get
một
some
với
kind
những
of gimme picks or
sứ giả
make
và
a
rồng
heroic play.
những
And
đường
it's
trên
going to have
lớn
to be
quá.
Chovy, I think, who looks for it, because right now he's LeBlanc sitting under turret.
And that is what I want to talk about. Like, how do you get back into this game as Hanwha Life? And it relies on T1 making, I think, pretty big mistakes. Because the amount of damage here available now, I think in terms of like base champion damage is still enough. Right? I think the next 10 minutes, you're still able to find something. But you're talking about someone from T1 overstepping, getting taken down, there's a lot of pick potential, right? And then you take down one man, you look to the objective, and then T1 eats 1 or 2 arrows too many, right? Deft is approaching, hopefully, his second item already has the Serpent's Fang, which has a lot of value.
Đây là hậu quả của chuyện là bạn mất hai cái trụ
And then once
một
you've gotten that done, you
ở
can
hai
step
cánh
it
sớm,
into a Baron,
bạn
and
không
from
kiểm
that
soát
you
được
can
tầm
turn the
nhìn. Và khi
gold
đó rừng
lead
của bạn
and
sẽ
keep
trở
the
thành rừng của
tempo
đối phương.
high. But
Tại vì bên phía
doesn't
T1
look like
sẽ
T1 is
cắm
gonna
được
let
nhiều
them
mắt
do
hơn,
that.
cắm được mắt sâu
I mean,
hơn
they
rồi
also
sẽ tiến
have
vào
a
những
brawl.
rừng mà họ biết
Yeah,
là
I
không
don't
có
know,
nguồn phòng
like,
ngự.
Well,
It's
I'm not
very
saying it's
difficult to
I'm
get
not
these
saying it's a
arrows
good
to
plan,
do
man,
anything.
Đáng
right?
ngon,
I just want to
giả
provide. We
con
need a
quen
plan.
cầm bùa đỏ
It
không
was
phải là một
desperate.
con
It was a
Yes.
desperate attempt, and I appreciate
không
you
phải là một
taking
thứ mà
it.
bạn có thể
I mean,
coi
the
được
other
được.
thing
Tại vì
is, like,
cái
right
khả
now
năng
is Chovy, watch him
cầm
try
cầm
to
bùa đỏ
find any damage, and it's just not realistic.
Well, the
Sứ
rest
giả
of the
còn
team
4
coming
ngàn
over,
máu,
but
bây giờ
Shirley's
đang
down
vào
very,
vị
very
trí
low.
của
This
mình
is the
cũng
flash
vào và
on
ta dùng
point
cú
against
bắn
Thunder,
bên giữa rồi chúng ta
just
đang
throws
dùng
his
chiếc lại
life
bắn năm
away
xuống
in the
quá
end.
nguy phạt chẳng
Yeah,
còn cơ hội
pretty
nào
immune right now as
phải
Vistal can
chạy
try and get his way
chạy
out.
bao nhiêu
Oh,
người
not
bên
quite
ta
able to
không
land
có
the
rồi,
passive just there as the
không
piercing
hậu
arrow
phòng
does a
lại
lot
chứ
of
vốn
work.
đang lúc người ta bắn
Eventually,
có điểm nào
with the
được.
help of a few dots, is able to take down the Nautilus. As over
Vì nó
goes
làm
Chovy
choáng
into the
không
death
biết được.
chamber with him as Morgan as well, trying to walk his way out. T1 extraordinarily far ahead right now, 5-0 in the kill. Shirley steps up, they're looking to break down this turret. As Canada's standing in, getting a bit of his thumbs up out there. And this could just be 2 turrets right here.
That right there is why T1 left the LeBlanc open. They knew it had to be picked up. You can't let the champion go. The fake it, Chovy picks it up. And then you have a composition that doesn't let the champion play the game. Every time Chovy goes for something, he gets blown up.
Everybody's grouped up. You've got a Braum. There's a lot of CC here on T1's side, and you're trying to poke a Poppy. I mean, that was the target they chose. The Crescent Guard wasn't on the target you want. You have to be able to hit those squishy back targets. We see a flash is burned here. Once again, Poppy's going to escape LeBlanc, but if you can't put the threat on the Gumayusi, then what are you doing, unfortunately, as Chovy in these fights? Like, look at where he is when the Crescent Guard comes through, and its owner is isolated. The toughest target in T1's roster to kill, and instantly carry a press his ult, and you're done. You're in a choke point against Gwen. What are you gonna do?
And this is such a key Hanwha Life thing. Well, I think that engagement from Willa, when the rest of the team is ready, that can win you a fight. I actually think it's a nice attempt to try and split up. But the rest of his team isn't there. You can't go in like that when you have a team that isn't available to actually follow up on that very aggressive engage. The rest of your team actually is short range in the case of Chovy and Morgan, or in the case of Deft needs to actually be in position. Instead, you force them to opt into a fight that they don't want to take, and you dig yourself deeper and deeper into the hole.
Besides that he doesn't actually want to be in the river at that point in time, and I don't blame him.
cái vách tường,
Chovy and Deft over to the side. Ona takes a bit of damage, but he's already very tanky right now on this Poppy.
He can't all-in Faker. Faker's ult's up. You can't all-in Gumayusi because Keria is with him non-stop. You need everybody to go in all at once.
They're still trying to find something though.
Và lao lên con Cana là tạo khoảng trống cho đội của mình, và ta rất là khỏe trong bóng đá T1 và sau đó thì họ sẽ hủy diệt cái đầu cành này. Vì không thể cửa thắng dành cho bên phía Hanwha. Dứt điểm với Thunder, 100 máu còn lại vẫn đủ Thunder có thể về
We
an toàn.
also just have an extraordinarily powerful T1, so I don't think souls are going to be a conversation that we'll need to have.
The engage here for HLE
biết xưa là
Esports, the
Chovy còn
coordination is so hard to
biến
pull
ảnh
off,
không
but
thể dùng biến ảnh
again,
lên
as you
trên
mentioned,
vách
Chronicler,
tường
Chovy's on the left side of the
vì
fight,
cứ kè kè
and there's a
nên là
poppy
Chovy
between
đã phải
him
phát
and the
tốc biến
team
để thoát được lên trên
that
hàng
the
rồng.
rest of his squad is trying to get on top of. You've got Carrier in a perfect spot, you've got Faker with his ult at the ready, so how do you crack this? How do you break through? And the answer is so far they have not been able to at all whatsoever. Owner's taken away so much of Willer's jungle that he's starting to have a pretty huge experience lead. He's a level up here, 40 CS up, and they're going to try to take some more.
Yeah, you can see Faker clawing his way over.
And these moments where you let the LeBlanc through and prove why you're not afraid of it means the rest of a best of 5 like this is so terrifying because suddenly you're like, well, do I even want to prioritize LeBlanc for Chovy going into game 3 or 4 or 5 if you're able to bring it back? I mean, this is just a complete outclassing right now.
And I stand by the fact that HLE making it to quarters in the first place was a big accomplishment for a team that has had an incredibly rough summer, has been unable to match a lot of the other talent that we've seen within the LCK, and they leveled up throughout the tournament. But unfortunately for them, T1 are also not the same team that they were coming into the regional gauntlet. I think you said it at the beginning, Atlas. How much have they improved thus far? I feel like we're getting a pretty clear answer.
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely more than what we've seen from T1 so far. They have risen to this occasion, whereas it feels like HLE have regressed to a lot of what their former mistakes were, I think, in draft and out. In this series, but having a slow start to a best of 5 is something that they've also done. It's just clutching at straws a little bit to talk about it right now.
Remember some of the implications of T1 smashing this series what it means for the rest of our quarterfinals as well, because T1 topped EDG, and HLE Esports made it very close against RNG, so it means a lot for T1 to crush this hard in their chances of maybe being able to contest Dom1 Kia.
Yeah, I think that's a really huge point, because I think part of the reason why I was going a little bit harder on the HLE Life have a chance here narrative is because if T1 wins, they need to get credit for it. It can't just be, oh yeah, well they took down the 8th place team in their region, because that's not what this represents, right? This represents T1 tidying up their gameplay so much more, as this was a 5-game series, and now Hannah looking to try and get more done. Massive ulti in the backline. The Varus just dies. I didn't even see what he got hit by. It just gets completely obliterated.
Coming through.
It was just needled. It was just needled. His cannon is just so extraordinarily strong right now. Willer trying to get away, but he's not going to be able to. Gets the thumbs up, and Canner is indeed unstoppable.
And this is giving me flashbacks to what we saw, as he might still get popped here.
Well, we'll see how immune he's going to be.
Hiểu không? Chơi luôn á, chơi tới luôn á. Chơi tới luôn đó.
They can just go over and grab it. And yes, congratulations, HLE Esports. You do have yourselves a Baron. But Faker is going to come through and try and do a 1v2. Ults himself. Gets a bit of extra damage down there. But Faker should still die. But no, able to walk his way out. Yep, that's the last kick. Calculated by the man in the mid lane.
Sống với việc dưới mình máu cảm giác ít nhất thì
player of all time.
Yeah, that's 100% knew that was going to happen.
He could have also just not teleported, but I think the idea is okay. Well, there might be more players
coming. Let it go, Wolf. Let it go.
People understand that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek.
Yes. Little bit of over-eagerness there coming through from T1 in the end, but it's understandable considering the game state. And this is a performance that even I'm not 100% sure there was a game in the I don't know if it was the one game they won or it was a game that they lost, but still, even in the summer finals against Dom1 Kia, Kana looked insane on this Gwen pick, and it's one of his go-to picks if everything else is banned. Here again, look at the confidence that this player has. This is effectively a 3v4 or a 2v4 or a 1v4 even, depending on how close you consider the rest of the team.
Vẫn còn cái tốc biến đó mà bạn ta chẳng kịp sử dụng với cái đường sát tương gần từ xe chỉ.
He was given so much gold early, and I mean, he's in such a lead right now that you can easily make these types of plays against a very squishy Varus who has no protection with the support that they've chosen for him. Right? He's playing with a Nautilus. There's no way out of this one, I'm afraid, and Morgan wasn't even there to peel.
Yeah, I'm starting to see why Varus hasn't been picked so far this tournament. As Death has had next to no impact on this one whatsoever. T1 continuing to push their advantage forward though, as the claw is threatened there by Faker, but instead they're just going to take this turret. All just standing in the mist alongside Canna, as Owner just playing defense, and he can certainly do that. Still has the ulti, he can just helicopter them away if he wants to. Airlift, as we like to call it.
I mean, this one's all over for the Crane, I think, in the second game. And if you're a HLE esports fan, the tears might already be flowing a little bit. And we talked about the implications for what this means in terms of, you know, how the finals could look if we do see RNG or EDG tear through the top side of the bracket, one of the big favorites there. But I mean, talking about in the microcosm of this best of 5, like I was mentioning earlier, you get the first pick high priority LeBlanc, which is one of the strongest mid lanes right now across all regions, and you get dunked on this hard. How do you pick up the pieces going into the game 3s, and then if you win it 4s and 5s in terms of drafting and strategy here, because T1 are just one step ahead.
Yeah, it's really, really rough. They're going to fight for this blue buff. It is going to be secured there by Chovy, so at least there's that. And now Owner actually in a bit of trouble. He's going to find his way out. Faker then follow up though as he dives on forward with that Ring of Frost. Still has the ultimate. Also has Azonius as well. As Faker actually going to fall here. He'd already used that frozen tomb, so unfortunately no option to have that one. It's a 1-for-1 thus far. Still trading evenly here on HLE esports side. We were saying that, you know, that's bad. When you're behind, generally it's good, but I don't know. With the draft, it's so difficult to get behind.
With how gimme of a fight that was for T1, the fact that this is this close is a bad sign. I mean, T1 were way out of position, and they still end up trading it back.
It's free. Diving forward. Keeps going. It's free ultimates invested as well, right? Like what we saw there was HLE throwing free ultimates into Owner, who's still yodeling around the rift. Like he's feeling fine. He's not taken down at all. Again, they'll lose a little bit because they can, and I don't think they should, but they're able to. They have a lead this big, they have a skating advantage, they're in an incredible spot in this game. Can just chill until that Mountain Drake comes up and then just go for that. Because, as we pointed out, like that fight should never have been that close. That was not a good fight for T1 to take, but when you're this rich, you can actually get away with it. It's something that I think is going to be really hard to do anything in this game about for HLE. That's what we cast our eyes forward, right, to a possible third game, and then do you say HLE just drop scaling? I don't think that works against T1 with how they're playing right now.
I think taking away the Aphelios is a good start. Yes. Gumayusi has been so extraordinarily comfortable. T1 have looked so clean playing around him on the bottom side, and Deft has honestly looked invisible this whole series.
Yeah, and that's not what we've seen from him in Worlds, and that's what we saw from him in the Gauntlet, and even the very end of regular season for Summer. And it's disappointing to see, but it's also part of T1's whole game plan to put the Aphelios on the top side of the map early, try to get extra plate gold on him, and use that Rift Herald timing there. So I think just putting a wrench into the gears of T1, you know, at the drafting stage like that is one good way to start. But, I mean, we're looking at 2 minutes until a Mountain Soul versus a Varus that isn't fed. Like, it doesn't get much worse than this. I mean, I don't see a world where HLE esports is going to suddenly bring this around unless T1 starts donating picks.
And now T1 going for a reset in anticipation of this Baron. It's back to business as usual here for this team. And just to look back in history just a little bit, I find it kind of poignant that LeBlanc is left open and T1 punish it because Deft was on the team that famously punished Faker for the very first time on his LeBlanc International back in 2015.
And it also is something of a showcase of how League has changed over the years. Because I think if Chovy was a player in 2014, 2015, individual carry performances were, I think, much more common. It was much more possible with the state of the game, but team play has become so much more important.
Looking for a bit of a fight here. Depth charge comes down from Mystery, still very healthy as well. It comes through with the ulti. Okay, down now for Owner, so no one going to be disengaged just yet, but they've barely gotten through the health bars as Morgan comes around for a big flank. For the rest of his team, like, well, we're not really sure about this anymore.
Yeah, we can't rescue you, and Morgan has no teleport here, so he's going to have to just kind of hover around and wait for the sandwich to come through. There's so much vision here for T1 and HLE esports have to push through.
It's going to rush it down. Morgan can dive on over the side. Sephar's presence is going to be there, and the puppy locks down the Baron. Now can they win the fight? Morgan just rolled over Chovy, and with Chovy dead, there is nothing left. It's a triple kill for Gumayusi and Tech. finds himself alone. I think this is the end for HLE Esports in game number 2. As Deft not going to be able to cleanse again, and that's going to be the ace given over. T1 storm down the mid lane in an extraordinarily dominant first 2 games. They'll bring themselves to match point.
They've neutered Deft in the early game. They prevented Chovy from getting a lead back-to-back game after game here. Chovy's not able to carry. He's not able to pop off. Morgan not getting ahead. And these early game, extremely tempo-based compositions that we're seeing HLE Esports try to run into an extremely macro-aware T1. A T1 that's playing the early game around Herald control well, a T1 that's controlling vision well, is not where you want to be as HLE Esports. Maybe just trap, ball scaling, put yourself in a